Ethan Cole was driving home alone through the desert road late at night. The sky was dark and the road was empty. Only his old truck and the cold wind moved through the silence. He was tired after a long day at work. His eyes stayed on the road, and his mind was already thinking about sleep. Nothing ever happened out there. The same road, the same rocks, the same quiet night. Then a bright light flashed across the sky. Ethan quickly looked up. Something was falling. It was not like a plane. It was not like a shooting star. This thing burned blue and silver as it cut through the darkness. It moved too fast and too strange. A second later, it disappeared behind the hills ahead. Then the ground shook. Ethan slammed his foot on the brakes. His truck stopped with a hard sound. He sat still for one moment, staring at the hills. "What was that?" he whispered. A soft line of smoke began to rise into the sky. Every smart thought in his head told him to stay in the truck. It could be dangerous, it could be military, it could be something he should never go near. But Ethan was not the kind of man who could ignore trouble. He turned the truck off the road and drove toward the crash site. When he reached the rocky hill, he got out slowly. The air smelled hot, like burned metal. Blue sparks danced in the dark. Then he saw it. A small silver pod had crashed into the ground. It was half buried in sand and stone. Its smooth metal shell was broken open. Strange symbols glowed across its side, flickering like weak lights. It looked nothing like anything made on Earth. Ethan's heart started beating fast. Then he heard it, crying. Small, weak, scared. He stepped closer and looked inside the broken pod. 2 little girls were hiding there, but they were not human. Their skin had a soft silver glow. Their eyes were larger than human eyes, bright and full of fear. One looked a little older. She was holding the smaller one tightly in her arms. Both were shaking. For a second, Ethan could not move. The older girl looked at him with tears in her eyes. She raised one trembling hand not to attack but to beg. Then in broken English she whispered, "Please, help us." Ethan looked around at the empty desert. The night suddenly felt very different. He did not know who they were. He did not know where they came from. And he did not know what was hunting them. But he knew one thing. They were children. Very carefully, Ethan reached his hand toward them. "It's okay," he said softly. "I won't hurt you." Far above them, hidden behind the clouds, a dark shape moved across the sky. Ethan did not see it, but it was already looking for the pod. Ethan did not sleep that night. He sat in a chair near the living room window watching the dark desert outside. His old rifle rested against the wall, close enough to reach. The house was quiet, but not peaceful. Every small sound made him look up. Every shadow outside felt wrong. In the next room, the 2 alien girls were finally safe for the moment. He had cleaned their cuts as carefully as he could. He gave them water, warm blankets, and some bread. At first, they were too afraid to eat. They stayed close together on the couch, their wide, glowing eyes moving around the room, studying everything. The older girl was the first to trust him. She looked about 8 years old, maybe 9. The smaller one looked no older than 5. Both had silver skin with a soft blue shine under the light. Their hair looked almost white, like moonlight. They were beautiful, but in a fragile way, like something that did not belong in a hard world. Ethan knelt a few feet away so he would not scare them. "My name is Ethan," he said slowly, touching his chest. "Ethan." The older girl watched him. Then she touched her own chest. "Lyra," she said softly. She then placed her hand on the smaller girl's shoulder. "Sumi." Ethan gave a small smile. "Okay. Lyra and Sumi." Sumi still looked frightened. She held a small glowing object close to her chest. It was shaped like a crystal, but it moved with soft light inside, like a tiny living star. Ethan pointed to it. "What is that?" Lyra's face changed at once. Fear returned to her eyes. She shook her head. "Bad people want it." Ethan became very still. "Bad people?" Lyra nodded quickly. She looked toward the window, then back at Ethan, Hunters, she whispered. They follow us. They kill guards. They want key. She pointed to the crystal in Sumi's hands. Ethan felt cold. That small object was not just important. It was the reason they were being hunted. Then something even stranger happened. The crystal suddenly glowed brighter. Thin blue lines appeared across its surface. A low sound filled the room. Lyra's eyes went wide with horror. No, she said. No, no, no. The crystal floated out of Sumi's hands. It stopped in the air between them. Then it opened like a flower of light. A bright symbol appeared above it and began to spin. Ethan stood up fast. What did it do? Lyra looked at him with panic on her face. It called them, she said. 1 second later, outside in the dark desert, something answered. The house went silent. Not normal silence. Not the quiet of the desert at night. This was the kind of silence that felt heavy, like the air itself was waiting. Ethan stood in the middle of the room, staring at the window. The blue crystal had gone dark again, but its message was already sent. Lyra pulled Sumi close, and both girls looked toward the front door with fear in their eyes. Then the lights in Ethan's house flickered once, twice, and went out. Sumi gave a small cry. Lyra covered her mouth quickly. Ethan moved at once. He grabbed the flashlight from the kitchen drawer and switched it on, but even that weak beam shook a little in his hand. Basement, he whispered. Lyra understood from his face, not his words. She took Sumi's hand and followed him fast. Ethan opened the small basement door near the kitchen and led them down the narrow steps. The basement was old, cold, and full of boxes, tools, and dust. He pushed a blanket aside and showed them a small space behind an old shelf. Stay here. No sound, he said. Lyra looked up at him. They are close. I know. No, she said, her voice shaking. You don't know. They are not soldiers, they are worse. Before Ethan could ask more, a deep hum passed over the roof. Not thunder, not wind. It sounded like a giant machine breathing in the sky. Then came 3 slow knocks at the front door. Boom, boom, boom. Sumi buried her face into Lyra's shoulder. Ethan shut the basement door softly and stood still for 1 second. His heart hit hard against his chest, but his face became calm. Fear would not help now. He walked upstairs, turned off the flashlight, and looked through the front window. At first he saw nothing. Then a tall shape stepped into the pale moonlight. It was not human. The figure wore black armor that looked smooth and sharp at the same time. A dark helmet covered its face, but 2 red lights glowed where its eyes should have been. In one hand, it held a long metal staff. Behind it, farther in the desert, Ethan saw 2 more shapes moving near the road. Hunters. The one at the door knocked again, harder this time. Boom, boom, boom. A cold voice came through the wood. Open. We are searching this area. Ethan took 1 slow breath and unlocked the door. The armored being stood tall in front of him, almost 7 feet high. Up close it looked even less human. The red eyes on the helmet stayed fixed on Ethan's face. Did you see a falling pod? The hunter asked. Ethan kept his voice flat. I saw a light. Thought it was a meteor. The hunter was silent for a moment. Then it took 1 step closer. We are looking for 2 children, it said. If you are hiding them, your death will be slow. And from below the floorboards, Ethan heard the faintest sound. Sumi had gasped. Ethan heard the small sound under the floor. It was tiny, so small that a normal man might have missed it. But the hunter at the door was not normal. Its red lights did not move, yet Ethan somehow felt that it had heard the sound too. For 1 long second, nobody moved. The cold night air drifted through the open doorway. The desert behind the hunter looked empty, but Ethan knew the other armored figures were still out there, waiting. The hunter tilted its head. What was that? It asked. Ethan did not answer at once. He forced himself to stay calm. If he looked nervous, if he turned his eyes even once toward the basement, it would all be over. So he did the only thing he could do. He laughed. It was not a strong laugh. It was short and dry, like a tired man who had no patience left. "That," Ethan said. "Old house. Bad pipes. Bad wood. Everything in here makes noise." The hunter kept staring. Ethan crossed his arms and leaned against the door like he had nothing to hide. "You people landed near my property in the middle of the night, cut my power, and now you want to ask questions? I've had a long day. Either show me a badge or get off my porch." For the first time, the hunter seemed unsure. Maybe it was not used to humans talking back. Maybe it expected fear. Maybe it thought all humans were weak. Ethan let the silence work for him. Then the hunter lifted its staff. A thin blue light scanned across Ethan's face, then his chest, then the inside of the room behind him. Ethan did not move. He kept his breathing slow. The light stopped. "No alien life signs detected," the hunter said. Ethan's mind raced. That made no sense. The girls were under the floor. Why did the scan fail? Then he remembered the old metal storm shelter built beneath the basement years ago by his grandfather. Thick steel walls, deep underground. Maybe that was blocking the signal. The hunter lowered the staff but did not leave. "We lost contact with the royal pod in this sector," it said. "2 young targets escaped. One carries the key." Royal pod. Royal. The word hit Ethan hard, but he kept his face empty. "So these are not just random kids," he said. The hunter's red lights narrowed. "You ask too many questions." Ethan shrugged. "You brought the questions to my door." For a moment, Ethan thought the hunter might force its way inside. Its hand tightened around the metal staff. The air felt sharp, dangerous, ready to break. Then a voice spoke through the hunter's helmet, low and mechanical. "Report to Ridge Point. Signal found." The hunter stepped back at once. It turned away from Ethan, then paused one last time. "If you see them," it said, "do not try to protect them. Their blood has started a war." Then it walked into the darkness. Ethan closed the door fast and locked it. Only then did he let out the breath he had been holding. But before he could move toward the basement, something small and bright rolled out from under the kitchen table. It was one of Sumi's glowing bracelets, and it was flashing. Morning should have brought peace, but Ethan's house felt even stranger in the daylight. The desert outside looked normal again. Dry sand, long rocks, empty road. The kind of morning that made last night feel like a dream. But inside the house, nothing felt normal. Lyra and Sumi were awake now. They sat close together at the kitchen table, still wearing Ethan's old blankets around their shoulders. Sumi's flashing bracelet had finally gone dark, but no one trusted that silence. Ethan stood near the window with a cup of coffee in his hand, though he had not taken a single drink. He had spent the whole morning thinking about one sentence. Their blood has started a war. He looked back at the girls. Lyra noticed his face. "You heard him." Ethan nodded. "Yeah, I heard him." For a moment she looked much older than a child. "They were not lying," she said quietly. "Our family rules the Avenari cluster. My mother is not only a queen, she is the High Protector. Many fear her. Many hate her too." Ethan leaned against the wall. "And the key?" Lyra looked at Sumi. The little girl slowly placed both hands on the table. Between them sat the crystal key, now dim and still. "It opens the gate of mothers," Lyra said. "Old royal path, hidden path. With it, my mother can call her fleet across deep space in seconds. Without it, enemies can trap her armies far away." Ethan stared at the small object. Last night it had looked like a strange toy. Now it felt heavier than gold. "So people are killing for that thing?" "Yes," Lyra said. "And now they know you helped us." Before Ethan could reply, a low sound moved through the house, not a knock, not an engine, a vibration. The windows began to shake. Dust fell from the ceiling. The coffee in Ethan's cup trembled in small circles. Sumi jumped from her chair and ran to Lyra. Both girls looked up at the roof with wide eyes, but this time their fear was mixed with hope. Lyra stood so fast the chair fell behind her. "She found us," she whispered. Ethan stepped outside. The sky above his house was turning silver. Clouds twisted in a wide circle, pulled by a force too strong to understand. Then a massive ship appeared without warning, as if space itself had opened and pushed it through. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Smooth white metal, gold lines across its sides, towers of light rising from its back like a floating palace. And it was not alone. Smaller ships surrounded it in perfect silence. Ethan could only stare. A beam of pale blue light touched the ground in front of his house. Something was coming down. The light faded, and a tall figure stepped forward. She wore silver armor that looked alive. A dark royal cape moved behind her, even though there was no wind. Her face was calm, proud, and powerful. Her eyes, bright like stars, locked on Ethan at once. Then the two girls ran out of the house. "Mother," the queen dropped to one knee and opened her arms. For the first time since Ethan had met them, Lyra and Sumi smiled. But the queen did not smile at first. She held her daughters close, then slowly raised her eyes toward Ethan. And behind her, dozens of armed soldiers lifted their weapons. The soldiers raised their weapons and the desert air turned cold. Ethan did not move. He stood in front of his house alone with nothing but dust, silence, and a racing heart. The queen still held her daughters close, but the soldiers around her were ready for war. Their armor shone under the silver light of the great ship above. Each one looked stronger than the hunters from the night before. For a few long seconds, no one spoke. Then Lyra pulled away from her mother and pointed at Ethan. "He saved us," she said. Sumi quickly nodded. "He gave us food. He hid us. He stayed." The queen looked at Ethan again. This time, her face changed. Not much, just enough for him to see that she was studying him, not judging him. One of the soldiers stepped forward. "Your Majesty, the human may have touched the royal key. He may know too much." At once, the room inside Ethan's chest seemed to tighten, but the queen lifted one hand. The soldier stopped speaking. Then she rose slowly to her full height and walked toward Ethan. Her steps were calm, but they carried power. She stopped only a few feet away from him. "You protected my daughters," she said. Her voice was smooth and strong, but there was something deeper inside it. Relief, emotion, a mother's fear, finally ending. Ethan gave a small nod. They needed help. The queen looked almost surprised by that answer. "You did not know who they were," she said. "No." "You did not know what enemies followed them." "No." "You still chose to stand between them and death." Ethan looked at the girls, then back at her. They were children. Those 4 words changed everything. The queen's eyes softened for the first time. Behind her, the soldiers slowly lowered their weapons. Then she turned to one of her officers. "Bring the gift." The officer looked confused. "Your Majesty, here?" "Now," she said. The officer bowed and returned to the silver beam. A few moments later, he came back carrying a small black case. It was made of smooth metal and covered with golden marks. He gave it to the queen and stepped back. She opened it. Inside was a thin circle of living silver, glowing softly like moonlight on water. Ethan frowned. "What is that?" The queen lifted the shining ring carefully. "In my world," she said, "this is called a Varith seal. It is not gold. It is not a weapon. It is not treasure." She looked directly into his eyes. "It is trust." Ethan said nothing. The queen continued. "Only family, sworn protectors, and the oldest allies of our blood may carry it. With this seal, no ship of my empire may harm you. No court may refuse your voice. No world under our protection may turn you away." Ethan stared at the ring. It was beautiful, but it felt much bigger than it looked. "You're giving this to me?" he asked. "To you," the queen said, "and through you, to your kind." Ethan's breath caught, then her expression grew serious again. "But know this, Ethan Cole. A gift like this is never unseen. She closed his fingers around the glowing seal. From this day on, she said, the stars will remember your name. And high above them, hidden beyond the shining royal ships, another darker vessel silently watched. Ethan could still feel the warmth of the Vareth seal in his hand. It did not feel like metal. It felt alive. Soft light moved under its silver surface, like it was listening, learning, remembering him. The Queen stood in front of him, tall and calm, while her ships filled the sky above his small desert home. For one strange moment, everything was still. Then the seal began to glow brighter. Thin lines of silver light moved from the ring across Ethan's fingers and up his wrist. He almost pulled back, but the Queen raised a hand. "Do not fear," she said. "It is marking you as protected." The light stopped at his heart. A sudden warmth spread through his chest. Not pain, not pressure, just a deep, quiet heat, like standing in sunlight after a long, cold night. Then the seal became still again. Sumi smiled for the first time that day. "Now they cannot touch you." Ethan looked at the Queen. "Who cannot?" Her face turned serious. "The ones who failed to take my daughters. The hunters were only tools. There are older powers behind them. Cruel powers. Patient powers." Lyra stepped closer to Ethan. "They hate humans too." He frowned. "Humans? Why?" "Because your kind is still young," the Queen said. "Young people can surprise the galaxy. Empires fear what they cannot control." Ethan looked out at the desert, then back up at the ships above. Yesterday he had been just a man driving home from work. Now an alien queen was telling him that powerful forces might come for him, and maybe for Earth. That thought should have crushed him. Instead, something else rose inside him. If danger was coming, then someone had to stand. The Queen seemed to read that change in his face. "You are thinking like a protector already," she said. Ethan gave a tired half-smile. "I'm just trying to survive the week." For the first time, the Queen smiled back. Then she turned and lifted one arm toward the sky. At once, the royal ships answered with a low golden pulse. A clear voice spread from them across the desert air, speaking first in a strange alien language, then in simple English. "By order of the High Protector, let this human be known. Ethan Cole of Earth gave shelter without fear, defense without promise, and kindness without reward. His name is carried under royal protection." The words echoed across the sand. Ethan stood speechless. Lyra and Sumi looked proud, as if they had been waiting for that moment. The Queen stepped close one last time. "This is not the end," she said quietly. "This is first contact, not between rulers, not between armies, between hearts." She placed a hand over her chest, then nodded once. Lyra hugged Ethan first. Sumi followed a second later, holding on tighter than he expected. Ethan slowly hugged them back. Then the blue beam returned. The girls stepped into it beside their mother. Light rose around them. Their forms began to fade. Just before she vanished, the Queen spoke one final sentence. "When the dark returns, call, and we will answer." Then they were gone. The sky cleared. The ships vanished. The desert became quiet again. But Ethan was no longer alone under the stars. And far beyond Earth, for the first time in history, humanity had been noticed and respected.